Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Graceful Explosion Machine, a colorful blast of an indie shoot 'em up. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. As we jump to the main menu, we see that we have a couple modes we can play the game in. There's the main play mode, and there's also the challenge mode, which you'll unlock after completing a planet. So here are the planets, seen on the galaxy map. We've got Magentos Prime, Quartz Catacombia, Scarlet Epsilon, and Aurum Tau. So we'll start, of course, with the first planet, Magentos Prime. You have 9 possible stages. On Magentos Prime, the first 2 stages are just tutorial stages, so we'll skip past those and start with stage 1-3. Here we're piloting the gem, the Graceful Explosion Machine, a truly powerful little starfighter equipped with an awesome quad weapon array. You actually get the weapons throughout the course of the tutorial though, and here we're collecting the last of the 4 possible weapons we have for our ship, the missiles. So it gives you range, your power usage, your damage, and then it tells you a little bit about it. So for the missiles, we tap for burst fire, hold to continue, and the left stick directs the missiles. Pretty awesome. So this stage isn't necessarily a tutorial level, but it does have a little bit of tutorial still left in it. And we get that throughout most of Scarlet Prime. So, what kind of shoot 'em up is Graceful Explosion Machine? It's a defender type shoot 'em up. So we have these stages that loop around. If we go and fly left, we can continue to fly left infinitely, although we're just actually looping. It's not truly infinite. It's just a closed world. Or we can go do the same, go in the other direction. So I mentioned that the ship has this quad weapon array. That's really core to the element of the game itself. But before we talk about our weapons, let's go a little bit over the movement. As you can see, I've been dashing around a little bit. You have the ability to control your ship in the usual analog style axis, using the left analog stick of your controller of choice. I didn't mention, but Graceful Explosion Machine is available for the Nintendo Switch. It's actually the first platform it came out for, and it's now available for the PlayStation 4 as well as the PC on Steam. So in addition to being able to move our ship and dash, which we actually have 2 dashes stored up, so you can dash twice in quick succession, but then you have to wait for them to recharge, we have the ability to flip the gem left and right, depending on which direction our enemies are. Okay, so with the movement out of the way, let's talk a little bit about our weapons. So our primary weapon is the blaster. The blaster does not use the energy bar that we have at the bottom of the screen, but it does overheat. So if we hold the blaster down for long enough, you'll see that the weapon itself turns from yellow to red, our ship starts to smoke, and if it overheats to a certain point, we have to wait for it to cool down before we can actually fire again. Now, the weapons that do use energy, we've got our awesome energy sword, which flips around the ship in a 360 circle. The energy sword is useful for dealing with enemies, of course, in close proximity. It will also absorb or destroy enemy bullets, which can be useful. We also have the missile array, which I was launching barrages off at the beginning of this stage. So initially, when you tap fire, you fire 7 missiles, and the more hits you get from a barrage, you actually score bonus points for those. You can also continue to hold it down for additional missiles, but doing so will quickly exhaust the power meter we have at the bottom. So the way that we refill power is if it exhausts, it will recharge slowly over time, but we can also collect these gems that the enemies drop. And then the last weapon that we haven't gone over is our sniper beam, which is a long-range laser beam that's meant to deal precision damage to enemies far away. And it also deals heavy damage if it's focused on just a single enemy. And that's what we have as far as weapons are concerned. It actually provides a lot of variety to this kind of game, and it's helpful that we have all 4 weapons available to us at all time, provided we're not out of weapon energy or our main weapon hasn't overheated. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about the makeup of the game. So there are 4 worlds, and each world has a total of 9 stages, although Magentos Prime has the 2 tutorial levels, but there's still 9 stages there. So we've got 36 stages as well. And if you include the challenge stages, which are basically just like remixed and more difficult versions of some of the stages, you have even more. So there's a decent amount of game here. Each stage is consisted of, well, not quite each stage, but most stages consist of multiple phases. Generally 3 phases. The tutorial levels have fewer, and then there are also the warp worlds at the end of each planet. Those ones consist of a single phase, and you're just basically trying to last a gauntlet until you can unlock the warp gem for that particular world. So, basic story. The gem was flying along with our armada. We were attacked by this enemy armada, and we're both trying to get revenge as well as get our warp gems so we can find our way back home. We're just about done with this world, and bam, level complete. Once you complete a level, you get this really detailed results screen that gives you your score, both off of enemies and style points. Then you also get a picture of at some point in your best combo, which I think is great that they're throwing that up there. You can even pull up the highlight to go and see. It's like, wow, I was being awesome right there. It also, the level stats, it tells you like what percentage you use the weapons. You can tell I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the energy swords. I only use it for 1% of the stage. And the sniper beam definitely has its uses, but generally I don't think it's very useful for the main stage itself. Time, hits taken, number of blaster shots, and your rank. So the rank is completely dependent on your score. The higher your score, the better your rank will be. So, that's the one stage we'll look at in Magentos Prime. We'll look at a couple other stages so we can kind of see what the game looks like. We'll jump into Quartz Catacombia and do stage 2-1. Now here we're introduced to a new enemy, and the way that the game does that is you'll usually have a phase that focuses pretty extensively on that new enemy. This enemy here is actually really defended. If I actually go at him with my main blaster, he's not going to go down very fast at all. It's like he's got armor to our main shot, so it's best to take him out with something more directed. The missiles do a decent amount of damage, but not enough to take him out. It's best to use the laser beam for those enemies. He also fires shots at us, which, should we desire, we can use our energy sword here to absorb those shots. We'll show you that here the next time we encounter one of those enemies. Just to note, if you do need to collect some energy quickly, it's helpful to dash through them. The dash, although it does make you momentarily invulnerable to enemies themselves, it does not make you invulnerable to enemy shots. And that's something that's bit me quite hard throughout the course of my playthrough. I'm so used to dashes going and making me invulnerable to enemy shots as well. And it's like, oh, I'm about to get hit by an enemy shot. I will dash through that shot. And yeah, I don't dash through the shot. I actually take the damage, and it's just bad. So yep, we can use the energy shield to deflect, or rather absorb the enemy bullets. Maybe just destroy them might be the best way to look at it. Phase complete. So, let's talk a little bit about the scoring. Gem uses a combo system for its scoring. The more enemies we defeat, the higher our combo goes. And you're looking to keep your combo alive as long as possible. If you take a hit, then you will get the combo reset. And if it takes you too long to find another enemy to defeat, then your combo will also drop. And depending on the kind of score attacks you're going for, that often I find is what ultimately drops the combo. You're trying to find enemies and, well, the combo accidentally gets dropped. So it's satisfying to try and play through the stages to get the best rank possible, going for S rank on all the worlds. And of course, on the PC, rather the Steam version, and the PlayStation 4 version, there are achievements related to such, as you would expect. Unfortunately, there is no system like that for the Nintendo Switch, which is unfortunate, but that is what it is. So if you do take damage, there's the chance that enemies will drop a life power-up at some point throughout the course of your stage, being able for allowing you to continue your run. If you happen to lose all your energy in the stage, if you're in phase 1, you'll just restart the phase. If you're in one of the later phases, phase 2 or phase 3, you can restart from the beginning of those phases. You'll just lose a life, which is indicated in the bottom left there above the life meter, which are those green squares, or red if you only have one. If you lose within those 2 lives, then you'll have to restart the phase from the beginning. But if you're looking for the best score possible, you want to do it from the start anyway, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. So for the last stage we'll look at World 3W for Scarlet Epsilon, just so we see what one of these warp levels looks like. So here we have Scarlet Epsilon. We had some additional enemies that are introduced to us throughout the course of this world, and we see them here, these like big monsters with tentacles, but we can blast them from a distance using our laser, or get close and use the blaster or the missile barrage, all these different ways to take them out. So this is the way that these warp levels are. They're usually really heavy gauntlets of lots of enemies we're trying to avoid. They're quite tough to actually continue to hold a good score multiplier on, and sometimes even just stay alive. Especially if we're playing the challenge versions of these, which there are challenge stages, basically like Warp Plus. Those ones are really difficult to stay alive, as they're throwing a lot of enemies at you, using liberal use of the missiles and dashes to get me out of sticky situations. And that's basically Graceful Explosion Machine. I've had a lot of fun playing this game, I'll be completely honest. I actually took the time, throughout the course of this week, doing my usual scouting for my video, to actually complete it and get the platinum trophy for it. I enjoyed it that much. So, what are my minus flavors for the title? Well, I really couldn't think of many things that I thought the game didn't do well. The soundtrack was a little underwhelming, and that was really about the only complaint that I could have. You know, sometimes some of the enemies would come up and strike me unexpectedly, but that's just my bad for not being observant to them. And maybe if there was any other complaint, it's like, I want more. It almost felt too short for the amount of enjoyment I was getting out of it. So having more gem would not be a bad thing in my mind. As far as plus flavors, I love all the small details you get graphically with it. The explosions of the enemies themselves. If you notice in the bottom left-hand corner, the ship that we're flying is basically emoting with emojis the entire time we're playing the game. I love that. As we go and fire our blaster, it starts to smoke when the ship overheats. That's a detail that I find is really interesting as well. As our combo builds, we start to gain a shadow trail. And the higher our combo is, the more colorful our trail is. All those little details just add up to something truly memorable and awesome. and the game itself is just a lot of fun. So this is a title that I can heartily recommend. It's definitely one that gets the chef's seal of approval. So, regardless of whether it's on the PlayStation 4, the Nintendo Switch, or the PC, I definitely recommend you give Graceful Explosion Machine a try. And there we have it, Graceful Explosion Machine served up for your enjoyment. As always, thank you so much for coming out and joining me, and I hope to see you again next week.